before the babe wakes up, which will probably happen any time. Yeah, I might have to cut short the video at some point. Oh, this rat defense. Okay. Okay. This diagonal is open for the queen, but I'd like to potentially play f4 if he covers it up with a knight, for example. Okay. Just trying to play some useful moves. Could play a4 to stop this idea here altogether. I'm not really thinking about castling long. Okay. Okay, yeah, he basically forced me into it here. Can I play e5? f4, queen check. I think I can still play this. Check. Could maybe drop the bishop back. Okay, now should I play e5 before he does? e5. Probably should castle first so that I can take back on f3. Okay. Now, play e5. He's got squares here for the knight. f5. Takes, knight takes, bishop takes. f5 looks interesting. I'm used to playing e5 in these positions, so I'm not quite sure if this is correct. I think this is like this hippopotamus setup. You always have to watch that this bishop can take off this knight if you're like planning to use the knight for a recapture. Okay. Wow. So many potential things here. Okay. I want to try to open up the position so this feels correct. Okay. This looks really ridiculous, but maybe he can play it. Bishop over leaves this pawn unprotected. You can't castle on the next move because this pawn's hanging. Let's get a rook over opposite the queen in case I move my queen. Potentially set up some kind of tactics or something. Okay, he gets that off the file here. Let's see. There's got to be something here. Knight trying to get into g6. Maybe knight here, takes, and he wins a pawn. But then knight here trying to get into g6. Let's see. Also, actually, my knight does have this pawn, so maybe bishop here. Yeah, with the idea of pinning, maybe. Also, he can't castle because he just loses a piece. Pin is potentially coming here if he doesn't move the knight, so he might have to just move it. I wonder in that case if I should just take it. Okay, he allows this. Pin. Looking pretty dangerous now. If queen c7, I can almost win a piece. If he doesn't get out of the pin, no, he's got two pieces. That's okay. Also, I'm threatening to take this pawn if he doesn't get out of the pin. Or just take it with check. At the very least, I can win a pawn. Okay. I'll take off a defensive piece here. And, okay, so I can win this pawn. Also cement this bishop into his position, which seems terrible. So I probably won't win that pawn. Did I win one there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I did. Okay. So I'm up a pawn, and his king position is really bad. Okay. Okay, now if I take, and he takes with the queen, I could just win this pawn. But I'd be giving up this great bishop. Although at some point he's going to be able to play knight over, takes. And I wonder if I'll be able to really hold that. Queen b4, hitting the pawn for a second time. and then maybe threatening to come into position. Knight here as planned before. Knight here, but then knight back covers g6 as well. What about takes? Knight here. And then I'm hitting both this pawn and threatening to come in. Let's try that. He's got both bishops. That's a little bit annoying. I assume queen takes. Yeah, okay. So still hitting this pawn also here. He can probably go to the 6th rank and cover both, actually. Didn't really think about that. My rook is open now, though, too. I can try to double. Okay. Could just start trying to push pawns, but I want to do something a little more aggressive. He's going to kick this knight. Okay, queen over. This hits the pawn again. Threatens f7. He could have put his rook over. Okay. Should be able to still protect this if he hits the rook. Okay. Let's just get the queen up and over for potential checks. If he plays the rook over, I probably even have tactics here. Takes, queen takes, check. Check here might not really be doing anything, but what about the pawn push? That seems pretty bad. If he takes the pawn with the bishop, that seems really, really crazy. Could try to hit my loose knight. Maybe I should cement this bishop in. Okay, now potentially just storming the king here. I wonder if I should have left the files open, actually. Okay. This might be dangerous, but I'm going to try it. It's a little bit loose, this knight here. Still have this covered for the moment. A little bit sketchy. He's hitting the knight, but missed that that fork here. Also have checks here if needed. Wonder if I have a crisscross mate. Ooh, I wonder if I had that. Oh, probably not. There's a couple open squares. Okay, I'll resign that. That was a pretty good couple games. I gotta serve the baby wake up, so I'm gonna go do that. So I probably won't have analysis here, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed those games. I'll see you around. Hey guys, I'm back. Actually, it's been a couple weeks since I've played this game. I recorded like 4 or 5 games, and then I meant to like do the analyses later because I had to step out for some errands, and then by the time I got back that day, I was too tired. So I'm kind of slowly finding these games and looking back at them. And I actually watched the video again before I analyzed it, and I like saw some of my mistakes in this game as I was watching my video, which I didn't see while I was playing, and now looking back on it, I'm like, what was I thinking? But yeah, I think it's even though I made a couple really obvious mistakes, I think it's worth looking at it just because this opening, which is called like the rat defense, when you see these two, the small pawn center before any other pieces moved, I used to see this a lot, especially in bullet and like short time control blitz, at like certain levels. Like people just they absolutely love this. You get this a lot, and it's actually kind of interesting for like bullet and stuff, because if you don't play the right pawn break at the right time, you can end up just like letting black get away with the opening. So like black gives you a lot of space, and I guess a lot of times he wants to fianchetto his bishops, usually both of them, and try to attack the center that way, which is interesting on its own, but it's just that he makes so many pawn moves in this opening. Like he's got e6 and d6. He's probably going to play, like a lot of people play h6 and a6. A lot of times they'll even play all these moves before they develop any pieces. Then they want to fianchetto both bishops, so they're going to play g6 and b6, and they're going to play bishop b7, bishop g7. So it seems like that if you develop normally as white, that you don't have to memorize some line. You should just be able to create some problems for black in this kind of setup. And I did. I just obviously didn't play the right moves after that. But yeah, here we go with all these moves here. They're all sort of subpar moves in gray. And up till now, computer likes what I've done. A4 didn't like. This is kind of a reaction move because you want to slow black down from playing b5, and the rook is pinned, so he wouldn't be able to take back if he played b5 takes. Can't take back. But I have noticed in some of my analyses that the computer doesn't like this so much. So it's possible that you could hold off on this, and if just let white play b5, and then if he plays it, then you can play a4 to challenge that pawn. And if he pushes past with just con with b4, you reroute this knight over to like e2 and then over to g3, and you can play c3, so you really solidify this pawn chain on the dark squares, so that this dark square bishop is ineffective, at least for the foreseeable future. And you get both your knights over to the king side, where probably black's going to castle, and you can get some kind of attack. The knight maneuver is a little slow, but at the same time it's kind of nice to let black choose a side to castle on. Yeah, so all this kind of it's a little premature to play a4, but it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction sometimes when you see these pawn advances on the queen side. Okay, so f4 was what I probably should have done here in retrospect, and I haven't looked at like this in Stockfish. I mean, I see that f4 it's a little dicey. I mean, I saw that if he played the queen check, I could play g3. He doesn't have any piece developed, so, I mean, except for the bishop, but nothing that can do damage. And I would even be able to like block with a piece and castle long if I wanted to, although now having played a4, that's another drawback to a4, is that if I decide I want to go long, then I've already really weakened my queenside structure, so I probably should have left that pawn there and keep the options open. But anyway, f4 it's an aggressive move because it stops black a lot of times from playing e5. So a lot of times black will be able to play e5 and kind of clamp down. It's still usually better for white, but yeah, it sometimes can freeze your pieces behind the pawns and not allow so many lines to get open. But when you got the pawns on f4 and d4, it's a lot harder for him to play e5 without losing a pawn. So and maybe opening up too many lines before he's ready. However, before this, probably I could have started this knight maneuver, like knight e2, and then I would be able to block with a piece if I wanted to, if on the chance that there was a queen check. Plus, if I play knight e2 now, delaying this kingside knight open just one more move. If he puts his knight on a dark square, then he's covering up the queen, and then I can play f4 without any queen check. So that's why I was waiting. And I thought at first I thought he was like intentionally not covering his queen so that I wouldn't play f4. Maybe he was doing that, but I think he actually just has all these pre-programmed moves that he plays in like all his games. Like, if we look at his games from around this time, he was probably just like playing that a bunch. Maybe he still does. Who knows? System opening players, you're out there. You guys are out there. All right, so yeah, I mean, up till now, I feel like I've played some pretty logical things with a couple drawbacks there that I mentioned. It's like probably small inaccuracies. f5, I discussed this in my commentary. I think a lot of times I'm ready to play e5, so it was kind of hard to play f5. But I liked f5 because it's hitting two pawns, and whenever you can hit two pawns with an advance, then you really force a decision. So like if I were to play e5, I'm only hitting one pawn, and he could decide maybe he just wants to push past and close everything up, and then it's really hard to make inroads. And I feel like players who play this get in this situation a lot where they're really in danger of getting smushed, and they're used to like pushing past, closing it up, and then trying to figure out a way to deal with that, whereas maybe I have less experience in that. So I thought f5 was more promising. His king's still in the center, and you know, if he wants to castle queenside, he's actually a couple moves away because he's got to get one of his knights out of the way, get his queen out of the way, and then castle. Plus, either way that he castles, we've got pawn levers galore to try to open up the king position. So, yeah, he tried to push past here, but just opening things up. The computer didn't like this so much, but it also doesn't say that it's bad. I mean, just opening up lines made sense to me. So he tried to get out of the pin there, or he did, but then he got into another pin shortly after. Yeah, here, this is... c6 is a blunder precisely because of this pin here. So he actually had to play bishop c6 just to get another piece protecting this knight. Or I suppose he could try to move the knight, although, you know, again, that's yet another move that he's made where he's not taking care of his king safety. So then, yeah, the blunder of the century here, just... I don't know what I was thinking. Obviously taking the knight with the pawn. But, yeah, I was totally blind to that in the game. I'm not sure why. I mean, I didn't expect the move. When that happens, I think sometimes you should, or maybe all the time, you should ask yourself, well, you know, why didn't I expect that move? Obviously, there's a reason for that. And if I had stopped to think about it, then I would have seen. I mean, there were so many things wrong with this position. Sometimes it's almost like confusing to look for which way to kill him. But the funny thing is, even not taking this piece and just like giving him one of my pieces in exchange, I mean, it's still +6 position, which is totally ridiculous. So anyway, okay. I mean, I probably would have ended up winning another piece here, because if I take this with the pawn, I mean, I guess maybe he could try to push past or something like that. But yeah, like if he takes it, then probably even I can take, and if he continues to trade, then I'm just right back on the pin. I mean, I'm not saying that he would have done that, but well, anyway. Yeah, I just, why did I do that? That doesn't make any sense at all. I'm trying to remember what I was thinking here. Because this bishop, I remember said I wanted to cement the bishop in there, and, like, I had just done that. So I just achieved what I wanted to, and then I got rid of it right away, so that was really dumb. At least, you know, make him work to get rid of it, because he's going to have to do something like knight f8, takes, and then, you know, at the very least, I'm going to have a pawn that he's going to have to waste some time getting rid of. In the meantime, his king's still not safe. Probably if he played knight f8, I don't know. I would want to avoid the trade of queens, that's for sure. But there's so many targets in this position, I probably could find somewhere to move the queen and attack something. So after 2 terrible moves in a row, I'm still at a +3 position. And I don't think it ever gets much better for him until... Oh, I'll say I do make another mistake here. I thought this was a pretty decent move. But yeah, I guess it does allow for queenside castle. Well, that's not that great either. So where do they want to put the queen here? Oops, queen f2. So the best move was queen d3. Yeah, you know, this is something that didn't occur to me at all in the game. I mean, I was targeting this g6 pawn with the knight, but for whatever reason, it didn't occur to me at all to target it with the queen, and it makes perfect sense. I mean, he moved his queen here in part probably to enable castling, but in part also to keep an eye on this pawn. And I'm hitting it twice. I mean, it's just like, he's got so many weaknesses. It's crazy. But, yeah, I slowly over the last 3 moves went from like a potentially +13 position to like just like a +2 position. I mean, a +2 position is basically winning anyway, so it just shows you like how incredibly bad this opening can be. If you just even play like regular developing moves. So anyway, okay, I played queen f2. And what's I doing here? Okay, well, I won a pawn with the tempo. It's not too bad. So queen e3. So yeah, okay, this is interesting. This didn't occur to me at all. So I mean, I think this is a good square for the queen, of course. It's just that I could play bishop c5 first, just to make sure that his queen isn't entering on this diagonal like it did in the game. So preventing those entry diagonals is often helpful. So we get a couple things like this, and then a couple moves later, he does move his queen in. So I finally grabbed that pawn. I don't know if that was actually... Yeah, okay, the computer looks at it as an inaccuracy, because taking pawns in front of your king in these opposite side castling games often is not a great idea. Because probably at some point he gets a tempo on this knight, has to move, and then there's an open g file. So I'm not really quite sure. Maybe I was like getting a little frustrated that I hadn't killed him yet. But you certainly don't want to make your position worse. Yeah, I do remember seeing that he couldn't play this in the game, and he did play it and resigned. But okay, I mean, he's back up to. He was lost from like. I don't want to say move one, but yeah, this is an opening that if you're going to play it with black, remember you have the black pieces, so you're already a tempo down or half tempo down, and you're going to play 6 pawn moves in the opening. 4, 5, 6, and you're going to take the really slow route to all 4 of your minor pieces. So like fianchettoing your bishop can have long-term potential strength because you're on the long diagonal, but one of the downsides is that it's slower in the opening, because normally you would develop your bishop with 1 move, but now you're developing it with 2 moves. Now some of those moves are connected with the pawn moves, so I guess it's not fair to say it was like a complete loss of time. But yeah, not only does he do the slow way with the slow development method with both of his bishops, he does the slow development method with both of his knights. So normally we would bring our knights to like one of the classical squares, and okay, you're gonna have some influence on the center, and you're gonna develop your knight in 1 move. Whereas the way he did it, he brought them both out to like e7 and d7, and that means he's got to move the knights again. And probably he's looking for these pawn breaks like f5 or c5. But yeah, I'll have some options of how I want to deal with that. But man, this is really slow. And there's something to be said for it in the sense that probably it is still somewhat solid if black plays correctly, and there's probably counterattacking chances if he opens the lines correctly. So I think a lot of like these kinds of games are really interesting because it's kind of about like who plays the correct pawn lever at the correct time. So I think John Bartholomew was talking a couple weeks ago or a week ago in one of his videos about he even made a video about pawn moves, which was great actually. If you haven't seen that one, you should go back and look at it. I'll probably look at it again too. I thought that was interesting. I think it's in one of his playlist folders, like Chess Fundamentals or something. So yeah, because as white, like if you can play the right pawn lever at the right time, then you can really open up the position to your advantage. If you play the wrong one, you can just screw up your position entirely, and sometimes maybe even be worse. And the same thing goes for black. But I think the stakes are a little higher for black in these kinds of setups because, basically if white sees the right pawn lever and makes it at the right time, then you're usually in trouble. So, yeah, you have to be super, super precise in the opening just to make sure that you're not getting killed right away. So I just wouldn't want to play that way as black. I've messed around with some of this stuff, like in Bullet, you can just like play random stuff and get away with pretty much any garbage. So, what are you gonna do? But yeah, so we saw some opening here of the position and some of the things that happened. But yeah, it was an interesting game. Definitely, I'll have to think a little bit more about why some of these moves in the opening. Like, I really want to crush people who play this, so I want to go back and look and see, how I could have crushed this. So I think probably in the future I'll avoid a4 in these kinds of setups and keep that in reserve for the reasons mentioned. And I'll also consider maybe potentially moving this knight a little bit earlier. Although I like also keeping this knight here so that if he plays b5 and I play a4 and he plays b4, then I'm moving the knight when it's under attack so it doesn't look suspicious. Whereas like if you move this c knight voluntarily to e2 on your own, he knows that you're probably rerouting it to g3 and you're going to have knights on g3 and f3, both your bishops over here, and it's pretty obvious that you're going for a kingside attack. It's pretty obvious anyway. But then he might like start to change his mind and arrange his pieces to go long. So sometimes holding off on that's okay. But I do like to be able to play the knight over to e2 and then play c3. That really blunts his dark square bishop. So, but yeah, so definitely I think an interesting game. And sorry about the ridiculous blunder. What can I say? I'll see you guys around.